Hi folks. I managed 11 books in February, which was a bit less than I'd intended, and we're going to take a quick spin through them in the order that I read them. As a reminder, my tier ranking system is based on how much I enjoyed reading the book, not on its reputation, the author, what other people might think, anything else, just how much fun I had reading it. First up was Midwich Cookies by John Wyndham, a classic for its time. This was a very understated, very British alien invasion story. One day, the whole population of the village of Midwich falls unconscious, as do any that try to enter the village. And then the next day, everyone wakes up and it's as if nothing has happened. However, soon all the women of the village report that they're pregnant. Coincidence? I don't think so. The children, capital C, are born in the usual way, but they are distinctly unusual. They prove to have quite a hold over the villagers, even as babies, and they only get more controlling and manipulating with age. What is to be done with these odd children? How did they come to be? What do they want? And what does it mean for us? I enjoyed it. I thought I would. I've liked everything that I've read of John Wyndham's to varying degrees. I give Midwich Cookies 7.5 out of 10, which puts it somewhere on the boundary of planetary pleasure and stellar splendour. Next up was a return to the world of the aftermath with Haven by Adam Roberts. This is book 2 of a set of 4, which is set 100 years or so after a comet strike has laid waste to large parts of the world. The books are set in my local area as it happens, and I think this is a large part of my enjoyment of the story. In Haven, a boy, Davy, 10 or 11 years old, an epileptic, is sought after by different local power brokers for reasons which aren't immediately clear. It seems to be something to do with his seizures, and maybe they confer some kind of power. Certainly, Davy himself has no idea why they're all after him. I enjoyed the brief glimpses we get of my local geography. My hometown, for example, is under many feet of water. Just the tops of the buildings are showing, in a wide place in a lake of sorts in the River Thames. I liked being back in this world, but perhaps enjoyed it slightly less than Shelter, the first book. Nonetheless, a solid 7 out of 10, a planetary pleasure. A quite different setting for Involution Ocean by Bruce Sterling. In this, his debut novel, we're on the planet Null Aqua, which is lifeless except for one very large, very deep crater which is filled with an ocean of very fine dust. There are a number of things I really liked about this book, but I mainly love the descriptions of the strange wildlife that lives in the ocean, all of it very spiky and bitey and very fierce. The protagonist, John Newhouse, is a druggie trying to secure a supply of his preferred poison, Flare, by joining the crew of a whaling ship hunting for dust whales, which are the source of the narcotic. John falls for Delusa, who's a winged alien woman, the ship lookout, who's allergic to humans. So their frustrating relationship is really well done. In one memorable scene, they're overcome with passion and engaging in a lusty kiss, which causes Delusa to break out in painful boils and contusions in her mouth and on her face. This was my first outing with Bruce Sterling, and I enjoyed it. Another solid planetary pleasure. Next was Gateway by Frederick Pohl. The premise of the book is interesting enough. An alien artifact, a space station, has been found, and it has hundreds of ships parked there that go off to random destinations based on their pre-programmed routes and then come back to Gateway. Bob Broadhead is the protagonist, and he's won a lottery back on Earth and he's blown his cash on a ticket to Gateway to seek even more fortune in the high-stake gambling inherent in each flight. What will be the destination? How long will the journey take? Will it be a hostile environment? Will their food and supplies last? And will there be anything worth bringing back when they get there? Sounds interesting, right? But sadly for me, Gateway was a big disappointment. I found it hard going with very little happening in the first half of the book. I found the interactions that Bob has with the robotic shrink, which occupy a whole thread in the book, like half the story, just a bit annoying. And the constant dithering about whether or not to go on a mission as they kind of chicken out and bottle it at the last minute, also a bit tedious. Overall, it didn't do it for me. 6 out of 10, a nebulous narrative. Based on the scuttlebutt on the internet, I had big hopes for Empire of Silence, which is the first book in Christopher Rocchio's Sun Eater series, and I was not disappointed, far from it. This is a big canvas space opera with more than a hint of fantasy elements. Hadrian Marlowe is the oldest son of a ruling family of a backwater planet. He's a studious boy, good with languages, something of a disappointment to his father, and it seems likely he'll be done out of his inheritance by his cocky younger brother. Hadrian is promised to the chantry, the priesthood, by his father to eventually become an inquisitor or a torturer, and Hadrian is having none of it and contrives to escape off-planet. A plan which goes spectacularly wrong, and his life takes a very unexpected turn from that point. I really love the scale of it. I love the very obviously space opera elements, but also the fantasy elements. There are spaceships, hypersleep, a galactic empire, aliens, alien relics, alien invasions, but there are also dynastic families, arranged marriages, a quest, gladiators, swords, beggars, thieves, you name it. I loved it. 9 out of 10, a galactic gem. I'm only not giving it a 10 because I hear that book 2 is even better and I want to leave some headroom for that. Really good book. Next up was Stone by Adam Roberts, his third book, published around 20 years ago. Roberts is fast becoming a favourite author of mine, and certainly an automatic purchase for any new books that he puts out now. I'm busy in the background hoovering up his back catalogue in hardback, and I'm making decent headway. I've got 12 or 13 of them now. Anyway, Stone. The setup for this is very interesting. In the utopian society depicted in the book, crime is almost unheard of. This is a time of abundance and people don't want for anything. But imprisoned in a high security cell inside a star, our protagonist is a murderer. He's sprung from this fiery jail on the promise of murdering the entire population of a particular planet. I found there's a lot to like in this book. The descriptions of the planets that the protagonist visits are rich and detailed, as is the society that lives there. The population is dosed with nanotech, which keeps them safe and well, but our protagonist had his forcibly removed when he was jailed. During his escape, when he's dealing with various privations, his body starts to deteriorate fast on contact with the outside world, particularly on the very damp planet Rain. And he has to invent plausible reasons why he's chosen to let this happen, or even why he's chosen to appear like it has. I also really love the description of interstellar travel, which is done without spaceships in this book. You just need a backpack. There are lots of ideas in this book, in fact, and I was impressed. 8 out of 10, solid stellar splendour. Next was Orbitsville by Bob Shaw. This was great fun. A big dumb object story. We follow Vance Garamond as he gets into deep shit when the president's son dies on his watch in like chapter 1. He flees for his life with his family, taking his spaceship, the Bissendorf, and its crew the hell out of Dodge as fast as they can. Following instincts, legend, and some old observation data, they end up in the back of beyond and find a ginormous, clearly very artificial sphere, seemingly impenetrable. But what's this? An entrance. Inside, they're amazed to find a truly unimaginably large habitable surface area, many millions of times larger than Earth's. After a certain amount of faffing around, Garamond and his crew end up crash landing the Bissendorf a vast distance away from the entrance, and much of the book is the tale of their trek back to civilization, or what passes for it. There are practical difficulties, some strange locals, and the tedium of years of travel, plus the general jeopardy. I liked it, it was fun. 7.5 out of 10, straddling the border country between planetary pleasure and stellar splendour. In February, I went back for a second visit to the Honorverse with Honour of the Queen by David Webber. This is a straight-up military space opera adventure. I like the protagonist, Honor Harrington. I might even have a little bit of a crush on her, who is now skipper of a heavy cruiser, HMS Fearless. Harrington and her crew are posted to a backwater planet, Grayson, to escort a diplomatic mission who are tasked with securing a treaty on behalf of Manticore. This is geopolitics on an interstellar scale, and there are wheels within wheels. Grayson is a backwater in more ways than one, a throwback to humanity's earliest colonisations. It was settled by religious fanatics. While the passing of hundreds of years has blunted the more extreme elements, they're still rather puritanical and have strong ideas about a woman's role in society, making Captain Harrington's command and her reputation a bit of a problem for them. There's a lot of naval battle action with broadsides, midshipmen, death and mayhem. It's all rather good fun, a popcorn read with not much in the way of depth. I had fun. 7 out of 10, a solid planetary pleasure. A classic next, Philip Jose Farmer's To Your Scattered Bodies Go, which is the first book in the Riverworld saga. This was utterly bonkers, with an utterly bonkers premise. Seemingly all of humanity is simultaneously reincarnated on a strange world. All arrive butt naked and hairless, and generally in the prime of their lives. Richard Burton is the main character, not, I was disappointed to find, the movie actor, but instead the 19th century British explorer, adventurer, orientalist and linguist. And he's quite the card. After the initial surprise and general bonhomie, things go south and get violent, or tribal even. A really strange bunch of people pop up in the story. Hermann Goering makes multiple appearances, even becoming a somewhat sympathetic character by the end. Most of the book is taken up with a quest to go upriver to find the source and the answers to the big questions. Where are we? Is this heaven? Why are we here? Who put us here? Like I say, it's bonkers stuff, but I quite enjoyed my time in this world, and I'm curious enough to read the next one at some point. Another 7.5 out of 10, and that border territory between planetary pleasure and stellar splendour is getting a bit crowded this month. A slow burn on audiobook for me. I finished Matter by Ian M. Banks towards the end of the month. The action is mostly set on Sir Salmon, a shell world, one of thousands that scattered the edge of the galaxy at one time. A shell world is like a planetary scale Russian doll. And Ian Banks' imagination goes into overdrive here, and we have the strange clash of fantasy and science fiction that often happens when the culture meddles at the edge of galactic civilizations. We follow 3 threads in the book, each following one of 3 siblings, all children of King Horst, who is slain in dastardly fashion in Chapter 1. Princess Janseri Anaplian left Sir Salmon years previously and is now a culture special circumstances agent. Janseri is heading home after hearing of her father's death, but not his manor. We also follow Furbin, who witnessed his father's murder and is now fleeing for his life with his manservant, trying to contact his sister Janseri to enlist her very well qualified help. Youngest son Oroman is the final thread, and as he rapidly develops the sense that someone might be trying to bump him off. There are civilizations jostling for influence, religious fervour, palace intrigue, dastardly plots, highly dangerous alien relics, advanced weaponry, a drone disguised as a dildo, spaceships, aliens, and of course, the mind-blowing scale and mysteries of the shell world Sir Salmon. I really enjoyed it. Another 7.5 out of 10, straddling the border betwixt planetary pleasure and stellar splendour. Finally, in February, another classic, The City in the Stars by Arthur C. Clarke. I read a bunch of Clarke when I was a kid, and I liked it well enough back then as far as I can remember, but this was my first time reading this particular book. It's set in the far future, hundreds of millions of years down the line. Humanity has colonised the galaxy and then retreated back to Earth, and it's now reduced to one city, Diaspar, while the rest of Earth is dead and desolate, oceans dried up, no life at all. The population is kept stable by not reproducing. Instead, the inhabitants live for centuries and are eventually recycled and reborn, decanted into a new vat-grown body. Alvin, the main character, is a rare case, a unique, who is living his first life. He has big ideas, a fresh perspective, and lots of questions, including what lies outside the city. It's an interesting enough premise, and there are certainly plenty of ideas, but it seemed to me like Clarke just forgot or didn't care about plot or characterisation. It was really boring, and I almost ditched it, a rare DNF for me, but I pushed on and finished it. It took me over a week to get there, which is a long time for me for a comparatively slender book of just 250 pages. The clever ideas were just not enough to sustain it for me, and I dragged my butt through it, not really enjoying myself at all. So I'm afraid to say 5 out of 10, a nebulous narrative if ever there was one. Very disappointing. I therefore declare my book of the month to be Empire of Silence by Christopher Rocchio, a really terrific page-turner of a space opera and right up my alley. I loved it, and I'm really looking forward to reading book 2 this month. What were your favourite reads in February? Do let me know, I'm always up for a good book recommendation. As usual, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye for now.